Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Wrist from Off the Cuff. Today we have a very special episode for you guys, where essentially I'm going to be talking about how this watch here, the Christopher Ward Trident C60, really changed the face of the affordable dive watch market. And it not only set a bar for other micro brands to follow, it also essentially really pushed that value proposition to a level to where even a lot of the mainstream brands had to pay attention and really kind of change their approach and their strategy when it came to what they're offering and kind of their flagship divers as well as their entry level divers. So with that said, this is actually the Mark One. This is not the very first Mark One Trident. There was an original version that had a slightly less detailed case back, and also the original Seaward logo was actually spelled out, the full name Christopher Ward, and then it actually had the logo was a CW, essentially a W with a C in it, as you'll see in a second when we take a look at the crown. That was the actual logo, but the brand name was fully spelled out. Funny thing, it then moved to this brand name, to this kind of branding where it's the abbreviated Christopher Ward. It's the CHR, I believe, dot Ward, which people didn't like either. And then they cried out that, hey, bring back, let's spell it out. And then they spelled it out, but they moved it to 9 and all hell broke loose. So a little fun tidbit there for you if you haven't really been into kind of the micro brand watch kind of game for that long, and especially if you're not into divers, you might not know that. But this watch has such a history, and it's pretty insane considering really how new it is. Obviously this isn't something like Submariner or 50 Fathoms that'll trace its lineage back, to the 1950s. This is something, that was just made in the 2000s, but it's been so popular and so well received that it's just spawned updates and competitors and even companies that are, I think pretty clearly following suit with the C60 Trident. So with that said, let's go ahead and get this piece in hand and take a closer look. Okay, so as you can see, I decided to go with for this video to share the black on black model just because it's very classic. And of course, if you've been following my channel, you probably know that I've been teasing at the release of the Mark III, and essentially that model that I'll be sharing is also black on black. So I figured this would be a good comparative to kind of get back in your heads, and this watch I'm sure will be making a guest appearance in that future reveal video that will be coming up. But there's a lot to love here. Essentially, it's a 300 meter diver, 42 millimeter diameter. Forget exactly how thick, but this isn't really a review as much as to show you kind of where this all started from. About a $400 watch at the time. And the nice thing is that it wasn't a direct homage. Now this and the Steinhardt Ocean One really changed the game as far as quality Swiss-made independent watches go. For around $400 you could get either or, and they're great looking watches. The nice thing about the Christopher Ward is it was a bit more of a mix match versus the direct homage that you'd find from the Steinhardt. But as far as the quality goes, they were pretty close in the very beginning. As far as the fit and finish and whatnot, it was just really the design elements where I feel like Christopher Ward took it to another level. As you can see, this was not an original design. It's an original amalgamation of other design features from other watches that were very popular, and some even not so popular, like the Bremont hands. It's so funny. There are so many Christopher Ward enthusiasts that are out there that are like, oh, those are the signature hands. No, those are not Christopher Ward signature hands. These hands are signature Bremont. Apart from the Trident seconds hand, and then the dial is signature Seamaster, and the bracelet is signature Rolex GMT. So it's one of those things where what they did, one of the nice things that they did is these scalloped curves here that they have in the case. That was really very much its own thing. And then the side profile, you know, and then this clasp was really, you know, I'd say I was pretty inspired considering about the time that it came out and what was available on watches in this price point, and watches triple this price point. This thing was a competitive piece, and there's a reason why it caught on and became so popular, is because it really you know, it offers just so much. Let's even quickly get it on the wrist here. So, you know, 42 millimeter diameter watch on my 7¼ inch wrist. I think it looks really great. But so this watch, basically, the nice thing is it evolved over time, and essentially through more releases, more iterations, more little tweaks and twists, they increased kind of that value proposition even more. If you guys are fans of the channel, you probably recognize these bad boys from basically my most popular video, which is the blue Swiss-made blue diver video. The Rado is running right now. The other ones aren't because I just haven't worn them in a while. But essentially, you know, I compared these really standout watches that are huge in their class, you know, at the time anyway. Of course, there's now updated iterations of all of these watches. And the real standout was the Christopher Ward Mark II. And this was like the very first generation of the Mark II, where, you know, not all the new case manufacturer, it went up from, you know, 300 meters being more of a Seamaster Submariner alternative to now being more of like a Planet Ocean alternative. 600 meters water resistance. It got a bit thicker, but everything's just like exponentially became higher quality. And in that video that has, God, I don't even know how many views at this point, you know, you really see the value proposition that something like this offers, and really the only thing close to it, I'd say, is this Oris Aquis, which I still love to this day, and it's a great piece. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're basically powered by the same movement. And this watch is just slightly more capable in a lot of different ways, apart from just brand heritage, right? So really interesting how this watch really, you know, it stood head and shoulders, I feel like, above a lot of other watches that should have kind of been in the same class with it, but they really couldn't stand up to the specs. Really, the main spec that watches like Oris or Longines or Certina, their main spec is respect, because they're, you know, they're generally respected brands. Of course, this is actually, it was a kind of a dying breed. This was an updated Longines, and now there's an even more updated one. This was quite short-lived, and I love this thing. It was actually kind of a step in another direction, where they went with a higher grade movement and whatnot, and kind of went for a different aesthetic that was less tooly. But I think this thing is gorgeous. But then you compare it, as far as, you know, the clasp construction, just the bracelet, the stuff like that, and you just start realizing like how much value that little Christopher Ward, you know, had for the time. I mean, did you just like basically, and this was like a nicer one with that kind of stamped extension. You got the stamped extension here, but then you have a push button clasp, you know, similar to what you're gonna get with the Oris. You know, it's a nice piece, and it's very solid, you know, I'm sorry, bezel engagement there. And then it only got better with the ceramic version. So pretty nuts. And then, you know, let's say we step forward even further. Let me reach off screen here. And then eventually you got to this iteration, which was still the Mark II, but maybe called the Mark 2.5 because this was post rebranding. Also, the clasp was updated to have this little quick adjust in it. So toolless quick adjust in the clasp. Sorry, it's not focusing because it sees beautiful watches in the background. But so then you have the toolless clasp adjustment, and I mean, still all these great things. The ceramic, the 600 meters water resistance, and they went with the change and the logo, which many people cried out for, and then kind of were weary about what they asked for, because then now, you know, they went away from the traditional 12 o'clock space. But as you can notice, as these watches have slowly you know, progressed and evolved over the years, they've gotten more and more I'd say original with their look, and really the signature pieces of them have slowly kind of faded away, and you know, the mishmash style has been tweaked and refined. You know, also you got the lume seconds hand. Before it was just red tipped. Then you get the lume, you get the 600 meters, you get updated, you know, so many little things, little tweaks. And these aren't even all the Christopher Ward's, you know, C60s I have. I actually also have a COSC model. But, you know, you get something like this and it just sets the bar so high for other watches. Then you even have, you know, some you know, a little bit more mainstream watch like this Devosa that finally kind of stepped its game up to be competitive with the C60 because of, you know, just how much value there's there. Of course, you know, you get the ceramic insert and whatnot, and then even the color palette. It's very Oris-esque, but you know, the just the dimensions and everything do remind me a lot of the C60, and you can probably see why as you sit there. And then even brands that really had nothing to prove as much, you know, because they're just kind of beyond something like a Microbrand or a small independent brand, you kind of get to some of these, you know, more luxurious brands, you know, like a Raymond Weil, and they had to step their game up. You know, there's a lot of mainstream companies, to include Tag Heuer and the Aqua Racer line. They've slowly but surely have had to really step their game up over the years because of watches like the C60 and everything that they offer, and really just all that value and all that bang per buck. Now, you know, I feel like the Freelancer Diver is a direct reflection to the market, and just everything they had to do with this clasp, you know, fully milled, beautifully, just flows right into the bracelet. You got a diver's extension, you know, probably the same movement, you know, the SW 200, but then now you have of course full ceramic and everything. Even the indices style is a bit similar. The scale itself is a bit similar. The way that they look, the way that they fill, the way the dial is filled, and everything like that. So just it's crazy to see how much, you know, a small watch has influenced the rest of, you know, of the market in so many different ways. And I really love this thing, and I'm really looking forward to kind of showing you guys the next evolution of this watch, because as much as this piece and its future contemporaries really changed the landscape of, you know, of that kind of affordable diver, I think, you know, the Mark III is gonna just do it all again, because it offers something so special. I cannot show it to you on camera, unfortunately, because I'm going to be releasing this video before the trade embargo. But if you haven't, please make sure to subscribe, because I'll definitely be posting that as soon as the embargo lifts. that video will be published and you guys will get to see it and check it out. I'm really, really impressed by everything that Christopher Ward is doing with this watch. I feel like they corrected course on a lot of things. They added a bunch of features that I don't think people were really asking for, but somehow they still did it and like killed it. They, you know, like they just did things that I didn't expect them to do because they didn't have to do them. There was probably a very short list of things that you can do to this watch here to make it a better watch. But somehow, some way, Christopher Ward and their team just took this thing to a whole nother level and a whole new notch. And it really sheds a lot of, you know, kind of those borrowed design features like the wave dial and, you know, the Bremont like hands and whatnot. The bracelet that's that just screams GMT master. So a lot has changed, but at the same time, a lot stayed the same in the general design language. And there's just, I feel like they took the silhouette and they just worked it and molded it and tightened it up and contoured it in ways that have been very, very impressive to me. So it's great to see kind of the full journey of something like this watch here that started out as this, you know, great watch under $400 for about $400, not definitely under $5, to a watch that was just like, oh man, under $600, under $800, under $1,000. And I mean, honestly, this watch compares to others that go well above $1,000 or $2,000. So, and that's just this model. That's just like the Mark II. The Mark III just takes it up another notch, and it's just, I'm blown away. So with that said, if you like the video, please do a like, and if you're not already, subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys. Bam!